Hey, it's Anna. Welcome back to my channel. And I'm so excited because today we are going to be watching and comparing the Uglies movie to the book. I did rebuy the books as paperbacks. I don't think I ever really owned the original covers. I have a few, but never the first book. So this is my cover of Uglies. This is the iconic cover that I feel like I remember seeing all over when I was younger. I did read these as an adult and I still like them, but I'm gonna be real honest, I don't like Shay. I think Shay sucks. So you can already tell there are going to be spoilers in this video for the book, The Uglies. This is a 4-book series. I really consider it that there's this trilogy and then this is like an extra story where you still see characters from the other universes, but I don't know. I don't necessarily consider it a 4th book, but you know, I don't make the rules for how series necessarily work. So we are not focusing on pretty specials or extras, but I've read them all. We are mainly focused on Uglies today. I'm still gonna have pretties next to me in case we're in a weird Percy Jackson Sea of Monsters movie situation where they like combine more stuff. I believe it's really focused on Uglies, and I actually just saw a video of Scott Westerfeld on set behind the scenes where he was there, so he was involved, so I'm hoping it does it justice. I also really love that it is a movie and not a show. I know some people might be like, give me a show. I just think this is way too fast-paced to have been a show. I think an hour and 40 minutes, I think will do the book enough justice, but I could be shooting myself in the foot there. If you aren't sure what Uglies is about, let me read the description on the back of the book to you. We have Tally can't wait to turn 16 and become pretty. 16 is the magic number that brings a transformation from a repellent ugly into a stunning attractive pretty and catapults you into a high-tech paradise where your only job is to have a really great time. In just a few weeks, Tally will be there. But Tally's new friend Shay isn't sure she wants to be pretty. She'd rather risk life on the outside. When Shay runs away, Tally learns about a whole new side of the pretty world, and it isn't very pretty. The authorities offer Tally the worst choice she can imagine. Find her friend and turn her in, or never turn pretty at all. The choice Tally makes will change her world forever. This book was published in 2005. I was 10, and this specific edition with the cover was reprinted in 2014. So you can tell I feel like that this has been in the makings for a while, is my guess for this movie. And I am interested to see what the movie is going to kind of look like. The only thing I really know going into it is that Joey King is playing Tally, which I'm not necessarily mad about. I know some people might feel some type of way, but I need to see how she does. And then we'll form an opinion from there. But I don't always have like an outright opinion on actors before they like play a certain role. So let's get set up to watch this movie and have some reactions. I don't know if I'm going to be able to watch it all in one sitting, but we're going to at least start and read the Netflix description together. All right, so I have the movie set up on the TV behind me. It says, in a futuristic dystopia with enforced beauty standards, a teen awaiting mandatory cosmetic surgery embarks on a journey to find her missing friend. Okay, I mean, it's a 1-sentence description. I feel like you can't necessarily do more than that. I do think that they are obviously selling the surgery already to be something a lot more dangerous, which I think is interesting because in the book, at least, I feel like it's so aspirational to be pretty, and that's the goal. And it doesn't really turn ugly, I guess, to be pretty until like later in the book. So it's very interesting that I feel like the description of the movie makes being pretty seem a little bit more dangerous. I am actually really excited just looking at the promo of who I assume is Shay and Tally. I don't know. The fact that they're already in the forest in the preview, I think is very interesting, and I'm excited to see what'll happen. I do have all the books with me, but of course the main one that I'm relying on is Uglies, and then I have my computer here that I'm going to take some notes during for reactions because I don't think I need to yap about every single thing. So I'm going to try to organize my thoughts, kind of set like a 15-minute or so-ish timer. And if I have thoughts to give, I will definitely be giving thoughts. So let's start watching Uglies. All right, I got some of my notes here. We are 20 minutes in and I'm actually loving it. Maybe I was wrong about the length of time, but I am absolutely adoring what they've done with the books. And I think even though there are differences, I think the differences that have been done so far have been fantastic. So you don't actually get your first book, like quote unquote reference until, I don't know, know, I think maybe 7-ish minutes in when she takes a toothbrush pill. That is mentioned on page 4 of the book, but we have a lot that happens beforehand. How the book starts out is that you briefly meet Tally and her friend Paris, who is turning pretty. And in the movie, you actually start out with the entire backstory of the Uglies, which you don't really get right away in the book. That's something that you kind of discover over time, where there used to be a lot of conflict between humans and resources were used up. So to take away the competition, they turn everybody pretty and it saves a bunch of resources, turns it into a lot of positives. There are stunning visuals. Oh my goodness. I'm like glad that they waited to make this movie because of how absolutely gorgeous the visuals are. I mean, Pretty Town that you see looks gorgeous. Classrooms in here look gorgeous. I feel like they did like such a good job with the visuals. I'm gonna have to look up how much budget was given for this movie because I feel like it deserves it. There is a graduation ceremony that you see after meeting Tally and Paris. So Tally and Paris have a decently, not a long conversation, but like a 3-minute conversation that doesn't happen in the book, talking about, how they're gonna be friends forever. Paris isn't gonna get rid of his scar. Tally will join him in a few months, and how they're gonna meet up after a month. And you see this graduation ceremony where there's a bunch of folks there. You see Shay for the first time, and I really like the graduation ceremony in terms of selling the story of turning pretty and what a big deal it is. Then you have Tally giving like a short presentation about history again, mentioning the white tiger orchid, which you don't really see again until later. So I think they're doing a lot more of the backstory that you learn later in the book in the beginning, I think, to save time, which honestly I think is smart. I'm really not mad about anything. I love the mirror that they've put in as well for Tally to really like see herself and talk to. And then you get to the part where Tally starts to be a little tricky. Paris isn't messaging her. She goes to New Pretty Town. The visuals of New Pretty Town are beautiful. In the book, Tally does wear a pig mask to cover her face, but 1, a lot more people are wearing masks, and 2, there is actually a lot more that goes on in New Pretty Town that is necessarily shown. It's a lot of you find Paris right away and then she runs away because she's caught. Shay rescuing Tally on the hoverboard after escaping New Pretty Town is also not accurate to the book, but I think it's a faster way to build their connection so much faster than just having them casually meet. It's like it saves time. What I thought was really interesting, and the whole reason like I paused to here to talk about this update, is that Shay is seen with a book, and I feel like you don't learn about the books until way later into actually reading this, because right now, according-ish to where I am, you're pretty much on page like 28, 29 necessarily, because we just got past the part where she learned about hoverboarding, and then this whole book edition gets put in. So 20 minutes in, are we 100% book accurate? No, but I think the changes make a lot of sense and will help us fly through some of this discovery part a bit more. And I think that means some of the later twists in the books are going to hit even more than they initially did. I am super interested to see how the rest of this movie goes. But so far, I'm actually really loving it, and I haven't watched too many book to movie adaptations with like doing a video, but this is probably going to be one of my favorites thus far. All right, I've watched another 20 minutes, and the last time that I had talked, I said we had ended around page like 24. So let me go back to that in my book. We've covered that much in 20 minutes, but let me tell you, it actually makes a lot of sense. So at the beginning of the last 20-minute mark, so like 21 minutes, we see something that isn't in the book, which is like Shay gets to design these like hoverboard parks that they like throw into a vat of concrete and they can ride around. Not in the books, but again, visually it's stunning. It shows that Tally's learning how to use the hoverboard, which makes sense. In the book, they actually go out like into the wild to learn how to use their hoverboards. So I think that's a nice addition in terms of how to show that Tally is learning this new skill without having to like leave the dorms. They pretty much skim over between page 24 to about like page 70-ish because of, again, it's really in the book, it's a lot of Tally learning about the hoverboard and learning about the smoke, and it's really done nicely to where you learn enough about the smoke and see enough of the hoverboard that we didn't need to spend as much time on those pages, which I appreciated. I'm sure there's some little details that I'm missing in between too, but I don't feel like I'm missing any major plot points. Once we get to the 70s pages, specifically page 76, in the movie, we see that Shay has told Tally, like, hey, meet me at this spot. I don't want to be pretty. I'm going to run away to the smoke and meet David. I've talked to him before. And Tally's like, absolutely not. I want to be pretty. Good luck though. Bye-bye. Shay gives her a note and Tally's like, okay, I guess I'll keep it for now. And then the next day is supposed to be Tally's surgery. You see her briefly at the graduation ceremony, which isn't in the book, but is an addition that I appreciate. And And then she gets taken away from where the surgery is going to happen to meet Dr. Cable. I really love the little Easter egg as she's flying in like the hovercraft. It does say special circumstances, which is actually the name of the chapter that aligns with what's happening in the movie. And they also say special circumstances in the movie. So I thought that was like a cute nod to the accuracy in the books. And then I did not know Laverne Cox was playing Dr. Cable. In the book, I feel like Dr. Cable is described as much more wolf-like, much more the surgery has gone beyond making somebody just pretty. And I think Tally calls it like cruel pretty. And Laverne Cox like doesn't look like that at all. You definitely get weird vibes from her, but she is definitely selling it to Tally in the movie like, you have to save your friend. She's been brainwashed. Cable is a lot meaner in the book. A lot. They've toned it down a ton. And I don't know if it's because, you know, they're trying to sell you in the movie on like, oh, we know what's right. Dr. Cable knows what's right. They're just trying to help Shay. And then that's one of the twists that comes along later in the book is like how evil Dr. Cable is, which I think is an interesting character arc to do in the movie because you don't necessarily, you want to create some mystery in the movie and not just reveal everything right away. And I feel like there was still some mystery in the book around Shay and the smoke and all of that. You've gotten a lot more context in the movie. So I think that's an interesting little shift. That again, I'm not mad at. Is it 100% accurate to the book? No, but I don't think it's taken anything away. You still know that Dr. Cable is telling Tally, your surgery is delayed. We want you to find Shay. That's just accurate. The way that it's done in the book is a lot more meaner and straightforward. In the book, Dr. Cable literally says, you can die ugly for all I care. And Dr. Cable in the movie does not say that. Once Tally gets back to the dorms in the movie, she then has a conversation with Paris. Paris has snuck over to talk to her. In the book, you also meet Tally's parents. I understand why that was cut. Definitely for time's sake, totally understand that. The conversation with Paris is like fairly accurate in terms of like, well, you made me a promise too, Tally. You told me you would come to New Pretty Town. I don't like Paris anyway. And then you have Tally going back to Dr. Cable now. And I thought this was interesting because Dr. Cable also then said, you know, you need to help your friend. There's also a weapon that the smoke has created. There's no weapon in the book that they're talking about. Dr. Cable's just like, we've never found the smoke. Find it for us. We've tried, but we don't know where it is. Find it. And if you don't find it, we're not gonna make you pretty. So Tally ends up going. And again, there's a lot that is then truncated because there's a lot of travel in the book. Very descriptive, very angsty traveling, seeing all the sights, which you can really shorten in a movie. And again, I didn't really feel like I was missing too much. However, Shay's poem in the book has like 4 hints, as does the one in the movie. And 2 of the hints in the book are not in the movie. So the hints that aren't in the movie are 4 days later, take the side you despise and look in the flowers for firebug eyes. Once they're found, enjoy the flight, then wait for the bald head until it's light. So those 2, haven't seen them, not really said, they're different lines, but you still get to the same place that you're going essentially. There is like a wall or like a rock face climbing scene that isn't like one of the hints, and now she's laying in this field of white tiger orchids. And what comes next in the book is supposed to be this firestorm. Everything is being set on fire around her, which I just think is like, oh my gosh. I feel like they're still gonna set it on fire in the movie and it's just gonna look absolutely stunning. But the part that I paused at was that Dr. Cable brought Paris in to talk. And in the book, you don't really get to see Paris and Cable talking, especially this early. And Tally was given a necklace. It looks really gaudy on the screen. Like, I don't know why she's not tucking it under her freaking sweater, but she has this necklace that she has to like put her eyes on once she finds the weapon. That's the kicker, is Dr. Cable said is to put the necklace up to her eyes when she finds the weapon. In the book, it's just put the necklace up to your eyes once you find the smoke. So I'm really interested to see, because I feel like so far, while we haven't been 100% accurate to the book, there has been enough to where I'm like, this is a really good adaptation. Whatever's going to happen between Cable and Paris right now, that makes me a little wary, because that is definitely not something that necessarily happens on page in the book. I think it's mentioned later in the book, but it's not something that necessarily happens on page. So we as the viewer are getting a lot more information than we as the reader got while reading this book. So I'm definitely interested to see what their conversation is going to look like and what's going to happen in like the next 20-ish minutes. All right, so in the last 27 minutes, technically, because I'm an hour and 7 minutes in, we went almost 100 pages in the book. And I think it's really interesting because some of the scenes that were cut out, one of my favorites was actually cut out of the book, which I think I get why for the movie this is the first scene that I'm sad about it being cut necessarily, but I think they do a lot of these 100 pages pretty well. I will say between pages like 150 150 to about 190. They just kind of hop timelines. Like, I feel like a lot of stuff happens, but they don't necessarily go in chronological order of the book, which I don't think took away from the movie. First off, though, something that doesn't happen in the book, and that happens solely in the movie, is that it looks like Paris gets turned into a special, and you don't really learn about specials in the book this early. You learn more about them to a point later, and then obviously there's a whole book called Specials. Just having Dr. Cable and Paris talk to each other, and then Paris getting like this specials surgery, I thought was a really interesting addition. And that makes me kind of wonder if there's going to be, I don't know, like some point where this movie could be a standalone and we don't actually see Pretties or Specials. That would make me kind of sad because I feel like there's a lot of depth in both those books that I'd like to see on screen, but it's really interesting seeing Dr. Cable and Paris having interacted. I'm really curious to see what Paris looks like. You haven't seen Paris again yet, but I'm assuming he's gonna come next. So in the books, what happens after this firestorm that I was kind of talking about? Tally's laying in this field of white tiger orchids, and then there's this fire. She gets picked up by rangers, taken to a different place, and then she gets picked up by the Smokies, by David and Shay and Croy. But in the movie, it's actually David that rescues her from the fire, and instead of these rangers in the book that were causing the fires, you have the Smokies that are causing the fires, because you learn that the white tiger orchid is actually very dangerous to the environment, and so they're trying to clear those out, get rid of it like an invasive species. In the movie, Tally gets taken to an outpost of the smoke, so she's not taken to the smoke right away, and it's very clear that Croy, one of the Smokies, is very suspicious of her. Now, Croy has suspicions in the books, but not right away, and Tally doesn't spend any time at an outpost in the book. She goes right to the smoke. So that means one of the big scenes that we miss is in the smoke, there is this like library of books and older materials, and you get to see Tally kind of interact with it. You don't really see that in the movie. Instead, you see that the Smokies of David, Croy, Shay, and Tally all go onto a helicopter and try to clear out some of the white tiger orchids with fire, but Shay falls out of the helicopter, which like, I don't know why you wouldn't think of that. Like, I don't like Shay progressively in the books at all. And I was just like, Shay, you silly goose, why would you not be standing there and like you fall? So then Tally tries to rescue her, and we get our first look of the specials in the film, which isn't how I necessarily thought of them. And you don't get specials that early in the books either, but I can see how these seeds are being planted to still move the narrative forward. So they've tracked Tally, but the specials don't catch them, and Croy's like, what the heck, we've suddenly seen scouts and it's been one day since this girl's been here. And Tally's like, oh my goodness, but David's like, no, she saved a life, so she's good. Okay, whatever. Don't necessarily think that always makes somebody good. Shay and Tally talk about the necklace earlier, and Tally says like, oh, it came from Paris, but in the books she doesn't specifically like name anybody. There is, again, a lot more that happens outside of the smoke, but then eventually you get into the smoke and you get to see Tally work on the railroads for a bit. She doesn't necessarily talk to David as much, and we also see another specials like scouting attack, and there are people that are somewhat suspicious of Tally getting there alone. However, David doesn't really see Tally as suspicious, and he gives her gloves, and we get this whole conversation between Tally and Shay about how important like the gloves are as a gift, which is somewhat accurate to the book, and Shay basically says you gotta choose what side you're on. So David and Tally then have a conversation after Shay and Tally have a conversation about the gloves, and in the movie Tally just tells David, I think you have a weapon here, that's what I heard. But in the books it's not really like that. It's like David wants to take Tally to meet his parents without this idea of a weapon. And then the conversation that happens between David and Tally and his parents, I think is pretty accurate to the book. Obviously not 1,000% word for word, because it is a pretty lengthy part of the book, but I think it gets the point across that in both the movie and the book, there is this idea that the surgery that makes you pretty also kind of brainwashes you, and David's parents are finding a way to stop that brainwash from happening, but they don't have any real test subjects yet. And after Tally hears all of this, she decides to take her necklace and throw it into the fire, essentially getting rid of it, not wanting to communicate with Dr. Cable at all, which is also accurate to the book. However, in the book, before she throws the necklace into the fire, her and David have another little conversation, really developing their relationship a lot more in the books, which I think that's another part that's starting to lack in the film. But I also think because David was a little bit more of a participant in his parents' conversation, it kind of balances out. So far, the one scene that's missing is obviously seeing the library in the smoke. At least to me, that's one of the bigger scenes that stands out. And then the second thing that's missing, I think, is the depth of a relationship that David and Tally are building. Again, you get hints of it in the movie, but you get a lot more of it in the book. So now that Tally has thrown her necklace into the fire, we have some stuff that's about to go down. We're about 2/3 of the way through the movie, and I actually feel like we're about 2/3 of the way through the book as well, so I think they're doing a very good job. Again, I really like that it's a movie instead of a whole series. I feel like not too much is missing, and so I'm really excited to see what this last bit of the movie looks like. Am I gonna go all the way to the end or not? I don't know, but let's keep playing because I actually really do want to watch it. All right, we finished the movie. I would say pretty good. I think definitely in the latter half of the movie, it's definitely not as strict as it was to the books, but there were still some moments and some lines that made it in there that I was really happy to see. So I'm pulling up my handy dandy laptop where I took all my notes. So literally after I just talked shit about David and Tally not having any type of deeper conversation, they had a deeper conversation by the fire. I just paused it a little too early. My bad. What I literally forgot about that they did not include in the movies, which I thought was pretty good because it honestly made me like dislike Shay more in the books, was that Shay and David were like a thing in the books, but they're not a thing. And so Shay gets all mad at Tally in the books for like having a thing with David. And I was like, Shay, you wanted her to come here. Like, what do you expect, right? Like she came here because you told her to, and now you're mad that she stole this boy when that was not like her intention. She's still like, you know, loyal to Dr. Cable at that point. So I was just like, it made me so mad at her in the books. So I'm kind of glad that wasn't in the movie. This idea of like keeping Paris around as a special, especially when Dr. Cable and the special storm the camp, is just wild to me because like Paris doesn't freaking say anything. He just doesn't say anything. It's the weirdest thing. He says nothing. Dr. Cable does all the talking in the smoke. They decide to unalive David's dad in front of everybody. That doesn't happen until later in the book for sure. And then they just like let Tally go, where it's a lot more of an escape in the book. And then the one thing that's very different from the book and the movie at this point is that David literally has no clue about Tally's betrayal in the book after the specials come and all of that. Like they didn't show up together like they did in the movie. But in the movie, David knows all about Tally's betrayals and he's so angry at her. He's like, yes, we have to go rescue them, but like, I don't trust you. And I really appreciate that because in the book, again, he was like, oh, Tally, you're so wonderful. And then Tally's carrying around this like big secret still. But in the movie, it's a lot more transparent. And I almost like that better for the movie format. Instead of saving another reveal for later, I thought that was a pretty smart change that was made. And I'm curious if Scott was the one that made it. I'm like, I want to give like credit to him in some way. And then I feel like the biggest part that they cut out is traveling back to the Uglies dorm and recruiting people to help them with the distraction. That's done in like a 2-minute time span. I'm not exactly mad about it, but it definitely just happens like a lot quicker. And then we're in special circumstances again, looking for folks. And this is where they flip the timeline again, like they have done with some scenes in the movie. So David and Tally actually rescue some of the Smokies first before they run into Shay being pretty. Whereas in the book, they see Shay being pretty first and then rescue the Smokies after they escape again. So it's kind of flip-flop, but it makes more sense. There's this weird fight scene in the movie between Paris and David. And before they fought, Tally was trying to talk to Paris. And I was like, I don't need a Paris redemption arc. I don't need one for him. Because in the book, he was just like apathetic and he was pretty. And then you learn that, you know, being pretty messes with your head. And so when we see Paris in later books, it's already a bit more forgivable of him because it's like, oh, your brain literally got altered. That's why you were acting weird around Tally. But in the movie, he's turned into a special. So I feel like there's like a lot more that I don't necessarily like because I don't know, like he just definitely is more of the villain to me. So when him and David were fighting, I was like, yes, David, smash this guy to the ground. That's fine. And then Paris falling off the waterfall. Okay, he's gone. I don't believe that for a second. And then running away from special circumstances to the rusty ruins. Again, that's kind of shortened, but Tally's big, you know, I'll turn pretty and you turn me back. I'll send you a sign. I thought was interesting. And then she, you know, sees this big hovercraft come down. She's like, I am Tally Youngblood, make me pretty, which is the last line of the book. And it's just, oh, hearing her, like, I feel like that should have been what, like, I don't know what Joey King auditioned with to get that role, but like when she said that, I was like, all right, I like her as Tally. I really think I appreciate her as Tally in the movie. I feel like, especially in the books, there is a lot of like mature, you know, content that they're dealing with these surgeries, but they're still supposed to be 15. And of course, like they look older, but I just feel like Joey's able to encapsulate both like youth and maturity at the same time. I don't know. That's how I feel like watching her by. David, I feel like every other character was just like, okay. I feel like the makeup that they did on Paris to make him look special, I thought was exceptional. And then we see Tally's big pretty reveal. You don't see her turn pretty in Uglies at all. You see her turn pretty in Pretties, which means that when you get to specials and then extras is literally somebody else. You don't follow Tally in extras. But I feel like that is such like a huge hint going forward forward that is, you know, obviously revealed at the end of book 1, where you kind of know where the rest of the trilogy is gonna go. At the beginning of Pretties, you don't see Tally talking to the room like she is in the movie. And then in the movie, you see Tally has kept the scar on her hand, which I thought was interesting because I don't think she does that in Pretties, but clearly that's a sign of, you know, Tally's gonna give some type of sign. There's gonna be some connection back with the smoke. And the way that this movie ended, if there is not another movie, it's gonna be like the cliffhanger from the third Divergent movie. I do feel like these two books can easily be made into movies. I do think Specials gets a little weird. I'm not gonna lie. Or is it pretty? These both get weird. I'm not even gonna lie to you. They both get a little more weirder, a little more mature. So I don't know how they would like tone it down, but I would definitely watch it in a heartbeat. So I overall think that this was a really good book to movie adaptation where it cut enough out. And I think because there's so much travel in the book, that made it easier, because then you could just visually show instead of like reading all of the trees and the water and all of that. I would say that obviously they left out Magazine's part and they jumped around a bit. I would say like 8 out of 10, honestly. So like a 4 out of 5. I don't know why I switched to 10s when I rank books out of 5. I would say 4 out of 5. Honestly, 4.5 out of 5. Yeah, 4.5 out of 5 for this movie to book adaptation. I thought it was really good. I'm really curious what your thoughts were. I'm assuming if you've gotten to this point, you've watched the movie and read the book. And obviously, if you've read the book, you know everything that's going to happen in the movie, so it's not like anything major is spoiled. Except, I guess, Paris being a special. But, like, I don't know how that's going to come into play later. That's just kind of weird. Overall, 4.5 out of 5 stars for book to movie adaptation. I feel like that's pretty high. I, you know, live, laugh, love Scott Westerfeld. I really love his writing in this world. I think it's so incredibly unique and clever, and I'm really glad it's been made into a movie, and I really hope it allows people to, like, read the books. And I think it'll be interesting if somebody watches the movie first and then reads the books to, like, see kind of what the differences are. But I don't think somebody who watches the movie would necessarily be mad at the book. I feel like the only thing, again, that's really left out is the addition of Paris being a special in the movie, which, again, interesting choice on their part. I'm very curious to see how that continues to play out. So leave a comment on what you thought about the Uglies movie, how you reacted to it. I'm very curious to have that conversation, and I will definitely see you in the next one. I don't actually know what my next video is. We'll figure it out as we go along. So this is your sign to watch the movie and also to keep on reading. If you haven't read the Uglies yet, I'm so sorry I spoiled everything for you, but you can still read it. It should still be fun. I didn't spoil the other 3 for you fully, so you should definitely read those.